You're on the Social Entrepreneurs Index as one to watch. Tell us a little bit more about what you were building and how that caught their attention.
If business is the problem, then it must also be the solution. So for me, social entrepreneurship is using our power, using our influence, using our ability to make money and giving it back and using it as a powerful tool for change.
As social entrepreneurs, we know that it's often very demanding, kind of weaving these social values and sustainability into the fabric of our enterprise. So what is it about the field of social entrepreneurship that, in your view, holds the potential to make our world a better place?
That's a great question. Thank you, Anne. So I do think that the world should really shift into a direction where every business is a sort of a social enterprise. That's my dream. I think if there were more social enterprises, if there were more businesses based around values and ethics, I think this world will be a better one. So social entrepreneurs, they have an advantage because that's already part of their DNA. It's part of who they are. It's part of their mission. It's part of their brand values. It's part of that, even the reason why they exist. So that's a huge USP, I think. So I think that's the advantage. So, but I think there should be more.
Welcome to Global Socialpreneurs, a one-of-a-kind talk show showcasing expert social entrepreneurs. Learn their stories and their secrets to creating a sustainable impact. Now, here is your host, social entrepreneur Anne Scotland.
Welcome back to Global Socialpreneurs. I'm your host, Anne Scotland. I'm so thrilled to have you with us today. And today is a very special treat because we're going to go back through some of the highlights from Season 1 and 2 here on Global Socialpreneurs and hear what some of our favorite guests had to say about social entrepreneurship. And if you haven't gotten to know us yet, if you don't really know what this show is about or what social entrepreneurship is really about, or if you'd like to just hear the stories of incredible people who are doing it now, then stay tuned because we are going to talk about entrepreneurship inside and out. This is going to be a really fun episode, probably one you'll want to rewatch. So I hope you'll stick around with us. So what is social entrepreneurship? Well, this was a term that was forged back in the 1980s by Bill Clayton, which many of you will have heard of Oshaka Innovators for the Public. And he basically said, I started realizing there were people all over the globe who were doing for-profit businesses to create an impact, as opposed to charities and nonprofits. And because of that, I thought there should be a term for these people because everyone was out there doing it all on their own. Now, granted, remember, this was 40 years ago, 40 plus. So this was new then. Even now, we talk more about social enterprise and social entrepreneurship, but it was new then. What was really big and different was what makes a social entrepreneurship different from a nonprofit or a charity. And we're going to talk about that today with some of our guests. Also, what makes it different from a regular startup? And I'm going to ask them, why is monetizing so important? What is the factor in monetizing your impact program, impact business that gives it an edge or an advantage that a charity-based system may or may not have? And sometimes they work very well hand in hand. So we're definitely saying charities and nonprofits have a great place in the story. But our particular story here today is about social entrepreneurship. I'm going to ask our guests what got them into social entrepreneurship. And I should have been on this one because I could have given you a story there. We'll save that for another day. Why? Why did they do it? And then explain to us what each of their social entrepreneurship does. What is the business and kind of what is that business model? And then finally, I'm going to ask them about advice. Give us some advice for those of us who are already social entrepreneurs, to viewers like you or others who may not be a social entrepreneur but would love to consider it, or someone who's considering pivoting their existing business into a social entrepreneurship or social enterprise. And I'm really looking forward to sharing with you their answers to that. And then finally, we're going to even ask, what does the future look like? What kind of a different place is the world if social entrepreneurship was more of the norm? So let's get started. What is social entrepreneurship? Well, for the purposes of this show, I will say that social entrepreneurship has so many definitions, which is one of the reasons we're having this global conversation, which is to kind of not narrow down the definitions, but possibly expand them. There's several sort of purist definitions, but I think those can even keep us inside a box and prevent us from making the impact we really could be making if we weren't so attached to the precise definitions. But in simplistic terms, for the purpose of this show, the most simple formula that we use here is, again, can be up for debate, is this. So a social entrepreneur could say, quote, I do blank. That's their business. What does their business do? I do blank in order to help solve blank, which is a social or environmental problem. I build boats to help solve transportation challenges on the Amazon. You can fill in the blank any way you like. I just made that one up out of my head. But this is what we're talking about, okay? So what is social entrepreneurship? Basically, it's a for-profit business with an intention of creating an impact. The impact is more important than the profit, but the profit is really important. Sophie Lee is a social entrepreneur from the UK. Her company is called Electric Peach, and it helps impact-led leaders grow their work through new methods of marketing, which is very fascinating on its own. I asked Sophie what was her definition for social entrepreneurship.
If business is the problem, then it must also be the solution. So for me, social entrepreneurship is using our power, using our influence, using our ability to make money and giving it back and using it as a powerful tool for change in whatever area we feel most passionately about. And for me, that really is like the most important and impactful way that we can create change on a global level at scale.
Social entrepreneurs can come from all backgrounds and from all parts of the globe. I was just talking the other day to Toranj and Anousha, two of my favorite Farsi-speaking friends who have a company called Joy Culture. And this social entrepreneurship offers programs specifically to teach emotional wellness tools to the global Farsi-speaking community, which is fantastic. You really need to hear more about what they do later in this episode. I asked Toranj to tell me a little bit more about why social entrepreneurship is important for her.
I am also an actor, and I've spent 20 years behind the camera as a professional photographer. But what sets social entrepreneurship apart from a career path is that it is a vocation, it is a calling, it is a purpose. And it is initiated by one's own experience. It is initiated by your dharma.
Next, we're going to talk to our guest about what makes social entrepreneurship different from nonprofits and charities. But first, we have to just take a few seconds for a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Global Socialpreneurs is brought to you in part by Positive Talk Radio, KKNW 1150 AM in Seattle. Check them out at www.positivetalkradio.net. You're here with us on Global Socialpreneurs. I'm Ann SCOTTLIN, and we're continuing to talk to a variety of our guests from season 1 and 2 of the show. And we're asking now, what makes a social entrepreneurship different from a nonprofit or charity? How does that stand out and why? I talked to Adrian Ashton. He's a social entrepreneur and on the advisory board in the UK for the Organization for Responsible Businesses. So this guy knows what he's talking about. And this is what he had to say. But tell me, what got you excited in the first place around the concepts of social entrepreneurship?
Again, it goes back to my parents. You know, it's that sense of, they brought me up with a sense of social justice and looking at the world and saying something's not quite right. This isn't fair. This is not right. You know, we're a social species. You know, human beings to human beings. None of us exist in a vacuum. We stand or fall together as a community. So, you know, that sense of social entrepreneurship that says we've looked out of the window, something's not quite right, And rather than rely on a traditional philanthropic model of charity, relying on the goodwill of strangers to give us a gift that may or may not happen and may or may not come with strings, what if we set up something more sustainable, something rooted in trade and commerce, which gives us more control, more empowerment as well? So again, this sense of, if we're talking about trying to empower people, give them a sense of progression and hope for the future, we can set up a traditional charity, no problem with that. But then the people who are supported through that charity will always know on some level they've been supported because of the kindness of strangers who've, to some extent, taken pity. A social entrepreneur says, actually, I want something that goes further than that. I want everything. I want the cake and eat it. So I want to create jobs that will actually give people a sense of worth. So people know that when I'm employing them, that, be they're an ex-offender, somebody who's recovering from mental ill health, whatever it is, I'm doing this job and it's worthwhile. And it's actually a job that I've never had before. No one else would give me this chance. And I've earned this. And through my efforts, I'm sustaining it. That kind of impact for the individual, we're not changing the world in terms of the global ball we're all spinning around on. We're changing that person's world, how they see themselves and who they are as a human being. That there's the kind of the cliche, if we change the world for one person, we've changed the world. Actually, it's that power of collective actions. If we're all doing our part, that's how you start a movement.
Riccardo Sai is an incredibly creative director and producer from the film and commercial business. He has a social entrepreneurship called Storo, Storo, and it is a visual storytelling studio. Particularly, what makes it unique is it's for purpose-led people and brands. So this is really fun. You might want to check him out. But this is what he had to say when I asked him what makes social entrepreneurship different from a regular business.
Especially after the pandemic, at least, I noticed a shift towards different kind of business, which were more ethical driven, purpose driven. And that to me was also the reason why I decided to work more with those kind of entrepreneurs and brands, because it was just I felt I wanted to make a change with my work, really. And so in a way, having at the core of your business a moral code, an ethical code, and a set of solid values as well, it's so important for a social entrepreneur, because that's really where everything starts. So, and that will resonate with the stakeholders, investors, as well as customers as well. So that's so important, because people are there's an appetite, I think, for brands and for companies which are driven not just by profit. So having that as part of the core business and the really kind of the foundation of your company is so invaluable.
Adrian Ashton said it's about motivation.
A social entrepreneur says, because my motivation is rooted in creating change over time and embedding that into my business, that's the difference. Traditional entrepreneur, there's a market opportunity to trade, to make money, and that money might do some good things, but ultimately I'm in charge of it and I'm going to benefit. Social entrepreneur says there's a market opportunity to trade, to generate money, and with that money we will create good things, and we will always be creating those good things. I may take a wage, but ultimately this thing's going to outlast me, and it's creating something bigger than me, and my reward will be in the next life from this. I'm not going to take the big payout in the way that a traditional startup would.
Next, I talked to Eddie Capstick. I love his name. It's just fun to say. He is the CEO and founder of Appy Maps. He's a tech guy, also in gaming for good. But Appy Maps is a tool that helps map social impact ecosystems through maps, apps, and virtual tours. And I asked Eddie, to him, what makes a social entrepreneurship different from a regular startup?
Personally, I think it can take away the feeling of, when people use that phrase, it's just business, which means they're selling their grandma, right? Nothing is just business anymore. Everything should be personal. Everything should be, making choices, not just for you, not just for your family, but for the whole supply chain.
Erin Attere is part of a social entrepreneurship called Threads Worldwide. Threads Worldwide employs women in developing countries, giving them an opportunity to support their families by creating fair trade products and jewelry. Sometimes these women are from agricultural communities or even sex trade communities where there's no other incomes available. And by being creative with fair trade products and jewelry, they've found ways to support themselves and their children. I asked Erin what she loves about social entrepreneurship and what makes it different.
I love social entrepreneurship because it's a way to really reinvent the world in a way where a business actually makes a global impact. And so it's this beautiful interweaving of no more win-lose, but like a win-win situation where independence and financial freedom, all the things, but also in a way that really brings us together and makes a more harmonious place to live in.
So another thing lots of people ask about social entrepreneurship is, why is the monetization part so important? What is it about it being for profit that actually is an asset to the business? So I asked Toranj again what she thought about monetization and why it serves a very specific purpose.
Monetizing what we do it just increases the time that we can spend doing it and increases our reach. So it's actually creating more of a social impact as we monetize, because then if I can extend the time that I am spending on my social entrepreneurship venture, then I'm going to have more reach. Then I'm going to be able to do more. Then I'm going to be able to bring more and serve more.
So you can see there's a social and even psychological aspect to monetizing. And it is a really interesting and important part of what makes social entrepreneurship so special. I like to use an example. It's a very generic example, but you could even be a social entrepreneur and wash clothes in the river for a living. How is that? Well, you could go to your neighbors and say, I know somebody washes your clothes. I charge the same amount as they do, so it doesn't cost you any more money, but I give you 30% of my profits. I am donating officially through the proper channels to our local orphanage in whatever country you may be in. It's win-win-win. In a perfect world, there's always challenges and opportunities to learn and make it better. Win-win-win is people want to make a difference and they're going to give you their business in many cases because it makes them feel good that 30% of all the money they spend on washing clothes, which they had to do anyway, is now going to the orphanage. You will probably make more money, often will make more money in this situation because people are excited about doing this. So instead of having 20 customers, you may be able to generate 40 customers or 50 customers. Customers might even change from the previous person who was doing their laundry for them, right? So you actually end up making more income in the end by being a social entrepreneur, or at least the same in worst case scenario. And then lastly, the orphanage benefits because they're getting 30% of the income. So you can see how this is the paradigm, this is the format for what social entrepreneurship means in a very simplistic level. But this is why the monetizing part is so important. This is why being for profit is so important, including me. This is why I became a social entrepreneur. It was because I saw a need. I was already a motivator, a business coach, entrepreneur coach, and I also did volunteer work on the side with Amnesty International and other large charitable nonprofit organizations. And finally, I said, why don't I combine this? I should lead by example, which is making an impact by making money, showing other people how to make an impact while making money. You see how that goes, right? So that's also what motivated me to become a social entrepreneur. But let's get on to some of the other stories from other individuals here on our show today. Let's go back to Eddie Capstick. I can't wait for you to hear what it was that got him into social entrepreneurship.
I went on a blind date with her. And she was lovely, and we've met up a couple of times afterwards, but it was the restaurant we went to that probably changed my life.
Huh.
So as we walked in, we were given menus which just had pictures on it, right? And so
yeah.
all we had to do, we sat down, and there was a small smirk on her face, like something's going on that I don't know about that she does. And I go, okay, tell me what's going on with the pictures. This isn't normal, is it? And she went, no, when the waiter comes, all you have to do, don't say anything, just point at the picture of the food that you want. Why? Because all the waiters are deaf and dumb. They've turned their disability into an ability, so it doesn't matter what language you speak, you would just have to point at the food. That changed my life completely. It's like suddenly anything is possible if you just have the right mindset.
Erin Attere was working in corporate America for many years. I asked her what made her take the big leap from corporate America and a predictable salary of 6 figures to jump into social entrepreneurship.
What I love about this work is that, so many, I think 80% of Americans I read recently don't love what they do. They actually don't even like what they do, right? And I feel like many people, myself included, have kind of lived in default for a lot of their lives. I think the pandemic was actually a great gift in that it shifted us into really thinking about what's important and how we want to live and what do we want to do in life. And, for me, just my personal story, as I mentioned, I was climbing the corporate ladder for 18 years, very successful career, started missing my kids' birthdays. And I realized one day that I was in this meeting, a 30-minute discussion about the word the versus a, and a new promotional piece for a new product launch. And I'm just like, what am I doing with my life? And this was on the heels of a conversation, a Zoom call with, at that time, I started very part-time with with Reds Worldwide. And we had a Zoom call with women in India who were debating going into the brothels that evening. And so just the contrast there, I was like, wow, I felt called to this work. I need to really do this. And for me personally, I'm back on that path to earning 6 figures, but in a way that is meaningful.
Now, I can't wait to share this story with you, or rather let Tammy Jordan share her own story. Tammy has a award-winning social entrepreneurship called Fruits of Labor in West Virginia, a state in the United States. And Fruits of Labor hires and trains women in recovery, especially those just out of incarceration, in her bakeries and her farms. It's called Fruits of Labor. Here's Tammy Jordan.
We started our business in 2001, and then in 2009, I went to visit a lady that I knew in Alderson Prison. And that really transformed my view of how can my company do something beyond production or beyond weddings and catering and the things that definitely made my heart happy. So I had that calling into agriculture and production and into catering that moved me throughout my life. But then it was about a little over a decade later that purpose was added to it. And so when I talk to social entrepreneurs, is that, don't worry which comes first. Sometimes our purpose comes first and we have to learn how to live it out. Sometimes the calling and the things that we love and what we're talented in comes first, and then it's connected to a deeper purpose. So that visit really transformed the way that I looked at how a for-profit can be meaningful in a time and space that really was not even, it was on the forefront. So I had most individuals that I came encountered and with really wanted to say, become a nonprofit. This is what you want to do. You need to become a nonprofit. And I am so much about business. And so I was like, no, we're not going to become a nonprofit. We have to teach businesses how they can be impactful. And the only way I can do that is to be a business being impactful.
And now back to Riccardo Sai to hear a little bit more about his why and his transformation as he decided to pivot his business from a traditional model to a for-profit impact model.
I started to really really think about how can I use what I know best, which is to tell stories and to create beautiful images for good, and that was the beginning of the transformation of my business, really. And so that now focuses more on sustainable, ethical, purpose driven and value driven brands and organizations. So that was the beginning of everything. I think that there's one concept in Buddhism which to me it was quite profound. Is a Japanese expression that says itai itai doshi, I think it is. It means many in bodies, one in mind. To me, that really captured the essence of what I think should be driving life. I think so.
Mhm.
So thinking about it as us as individuals, so we're all separate, we're all different. We all have incredible stories to tell. We all have fundamentally different. But if we shift the way we think as in one mind, meaning that we are all part of one. So again, if someone is religious, you can think about God, you can think about Mother Nature, you can think about the universe, whatever. You can talk about quantum physics. There's different ways you can really explain that. But to me, that's the fundamental truth about how we really need to change and shift our perspective. So thinking about us as individuals, but in a different context, as part of something bigger. So one mind in that sense.
Wow, I love these stories. I'm getting inspired all over again just listening to them for the second time. Already, we have to take a quick commercial break. We will be right back, and you're going to want to stay because I'm next going to ask our social entrepreneurship guests to share more about how their companies work, and more importantly, to get their advice on social entrepreneurship. How can others do social entrepreneurship and be successful? How can they start it? How can they continue it? How can they improve it? And then we're going to wrap up about talking about the future. And I'm going to ask them, what does social entrepreneurship look like going forward? And how can the future look different when social entrepreneurship and social enterprise become more and more of a norm? We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Hi, I'm Ann Scotland. Are you one of those people who always wants to aim higher? Would you like to increase your profits and your personal fulfillment at the same time? And wouldn't you love to make a greater impact in your business and your life? If your answer is yes to any of those, find out more and send me a message at anscotland.com/special. I would love to work with you.
Welcome back to Global Socialpreneurs. I'm Ann Scotland, and wow, time has absolutely been flying. We only have a couple minutes left, and I absolutely can't wait to let some of our guests share with you what their social enterprises do and a little bit more about the kind of business model those are based on. Let's go first to Sophie Lee of Electric Peach. You're on the Social Entrepreneurs Index as one to watch. Tell us a little bit more about what you were building and how that caught their attention.
Sure. So Electric Peach is a brand storytelling and experience agency, and we focus on helping businesses to amplify their impact. And we do that by working with them to use communication as a tool to enroll more people in their vision and galvanize them to action. We also have a social enterprise element of that, whereby we work with artists and activists to help us to tell these stories, and we help to train them to be more impactful in their communication. I'm a communicator by trade, and so I'm really, really passionate about communication as the mouthpiece of change. And I have a really strong belief that there is no problem that can't be resolved through communication.
I love that. And for you techies out there, technology is a huge and very central and important part of social entrepreneurship. Often people think it's just about agriculture or just about food production, about health, wellness, medical services. And while it can be and is about all those things, technology in this world today plays a very important part. So to hear more about that, let's go back to Eddie of Appy Maps.
And I started something called the Social Enterprise Experience Tours. And I wanted a way to actually run a walking tour to go and meet the founders of the local social enterprises, wherever we were. And the easiest way to do that was to build a map, so you could literally see on the map where they were. So it started really as a personal thing for me, just to help me run walking tours and find out the founders' why, because the why story is the one of the most powerful things around, helping to, you know, empathy, and you really you don't forget a why story with such power. And so from that, I started building sort of, you know, events. So because it wasn't just, you know, people are interested in maps, sure, but people want to know what events they can go along to, what can I be part of and stuff. And then that's interesting. So how do we run a map and an event space? I know. Let's create an app where you've got maps, events. Oh yeah, we can add news. Oh, we can add jobs in there, so people can get jobs in the social impact space. Okay, and then hang on, we could add products, and then we could do affiliated marketing, and then we could generate some money to help run this thing. And then hang on a minute, there's hundreds, possibly thousands of communities that want their own app, which will show like a plastic-free communities all over the world. Imagine that you've got all the shops, the plastic-free shops. You've got all the events you might want to go to. I don't, you know, that sort of thing. Plastic-free events, of course. Then you've got the news of what's going on around the world about new plastics that aren't plastic and they can be biodegradable. And then you've got products which are not plastic-based, and you can go and find, you know, that sort of thing. So imagine how. So the idea in the long term is to build that platform that can host loads of communities having their own app with all of those kinds of things within it.
Yes. And as I alluded to before, there are basically three kinds of social entrepreneurship, at least within the definitions of our show, which is a social entrepreneurship is a for-profit business that's helping solve a social or environmental problem. Now, this can look like several different things, particularly three different things. One, the nature of the business itself can be the product or service it is creating or selling. So this could be creating a business, a social entrepreneurship that is creating clean water containers for carrying water in countries that don't have plumbing. So they actually are producing something that is designed for a place or region or purpose that is very specific to solving a particular social or environmental problem. And the second way, the second kind of social entrepreneurship, as I define it, is a business that is created to intentionally create jobs, like Tammy Jordan just shared a few minutes ago, creating jobs for ex-cons, especially ex-con women in her bakeries and her agricultural programs. So it's creating jobs by the very nature of the company. And again, I love that because it's leading by example. It's a for-profit business teaching people how to create profit for themselves. And then the third kind of business is, and this is the one that's a little more controversial and sometimes becomes a little more leaning towards social enterprise, which is something we talk about here. Like we said, we're not trying to tie down the definitions firmly because we want more people to get involved and not just be scared off by a specific definition. But the third version is basically a business that is does anything, any product or service, but is set up intentionally in its business plan to donate a flat percentage of their profits for a specific cause or impact program. It could be a donation, it could be a sponsorship, it could be scholarships, it could just be a chunk of cash even to another social entrepreneurship. But the question is, whatever they're making, I mean, it literally could be salad bowls, but they've decided that 30% of all their income, that flat rate of everything they make, all their profits, is going to go to a specific impact program. And I share that because Erin Attere from Threads Worldwide has a really wonderful way of doing this. Threads Worldwide is literally filling all three of those definitions. Let's hear what she has to say.
I love all those definitions, Anne, and I'm really proud to say that we actually meet all three of those criteria at Threads Worldwide. In the introduction, you mentioned that we create life-changing work through the sale of fair trade, handmade jewelry and accessories, and home goods. And so kind of that definition number one of really doing things in a sustainable way. So fair trade means essentially really good for people and good for planet. So no child labor, safe working conditions, all of those things. Your second definition is we are creating jobs. We are creating jobs for women in 8 different countries around the globe who hand make these products, but also here in the United States, so 9 countries total, where women can really contribute and have meaningful work while earning an income and building a brighter world. And then lastly, we also have different campaigns throughout the year where we donate a specific percentage of sales. So for instance, every July, we host these dream gatherings where the host selects whatever nonprofit or charity of their choice locally. So anything from cancer to, Humane Society, all of these things, they get 10% of sales, as well as a couple of other things throughout the course of the year. So I'm very proud to say that Threads is actively and intentionally designed to hit on all 3 of those criteria that you shared.
So we're talking here about what kind of social entrepreneurships our guests have, or what kind of business models they use. Another business model that's worth mentioning for sure is the co-op. And I didn't know until many years after I had been a member of a co-op what a co-op actually meant and did. This is a long time ago. But to be a little more clear on that and to help us understand, we'll go back to Adrian Ashton, our responsible business advisor, to hear how a co-op model can be so effective.
Worker cooperative, from the outside, looks like any other regular business, except it doesn't have a Jeff Bezos at the background owning all the shares and pulling all the strings, or an Elon Musk. Instead, all the people who work in the business own it collectively between themselves. It's their business. They have a stake in it. They're working it. They're running it to sustain their employment for themselves. They're designing it so that it's the best designed jobs for their welfare and well-being. And because of that kind of passion and ethos, they're also then saying, how do we be the best supplier we can be? How do we be the best buyer we can be? How do we be the best neighbor we can be to our community? So we see worker cooperatives actually being, the research shows us, the most resilient form of business models out there as we go along, and the most impactful for the jobs they're creating and the impact they make on local communities. And they come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes and colors.
Wow, we only have a couple more minutes, but you must hear some of our social entrepreneurs' advice to you, to others, to existing social entrepreneurs, to people thinking about becoming social entrepreneurs, to people who always just said, I have a day job, I have no extra time, I have no extra money, there's no way I can ever do something like this. What kind of advice does Eddie Capstick give to us? This is what he had to say.
Think massive, start small.
Think massive, start small.
Make sure that small thing works, and then add to it, and then add to it, and then add to it. And make sure each building block works. And the cash flow is still king like any other business.
When I asked Tammy Jordan about her advice to others, she had a lot to say about monumental change and what you can do to create that.
What I would say is, if you are building a model, you need to look at paying yourself a fair wage, and to be able to say, maybe I don't need all of that and I can put a little bit back in, and that's okay too. So look at what works for your organization, and just know that there are varying degrees. Some will support mission by profit. So once they make a profit, they'll support through a profit. Some will support through the actual doing of the task. And then some will support in all of that. And wherever you choose, you're making a difference. That's the thing, is that people want to say, oh, it has to be of this level. I say to businesses every time I speak, if every business that could in the state of West Virginia would hire one person in recovery, how would that change our state? Just one person, not 20, one person. It would be a monumental change.
Wow. Okay. We're wrapping up with a bang here. I had to squeeze these in. What does the future look like, and how does the future look different if social entrepreneurship is becoming more of a norm? And for that, I turn to Eddie. So Eddie, you are a socialpreneur.
I try to be, and probably even I'm now trying to go 2 steps higher, I think, which is that. Another thing.
What is that? I have to know now.
So going more to beyond social enterprise, there's a couple of steps higher where you become regenerative. So you're not just looking at social enterprise as one silo, You're looking at in the whole holistic round of everything that's going on.
And here I am going to give our beloved Riccardo Sai the last word. As social entrepreneurs, we know that it's often very demanding, kind of weaving these social values and sustainability into the fabric of our enterprise. So what is it about the field of social entrepreneurship that, in your view, holds the potential to make our world a better place?
That's a great question. Thank you, Anne. So I do think that the world should really shift into a direction where every business is a sort of a social enterprise. That's my dream. I think if there were more social enterprises, if there were more businesses based around values and ethics, I think this world will be a better one. So social entrepreneurs, they have an advantage because that's already part of their DNA. It's part of who they are. It's part of their mission. It's part of their brand values. It's part of that even the reason why they exist. So that's a huge USP, I think. So I think that's the advantage. So, but I think there should be more.
I agree with Riccardo. I think there should be more. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this discussion with these incredible people, these incredible social entrepreneurs, has really motivated and inspired you today. I hope that if you're not a social entrepreneur, that it got you thinking about what it is and how you can share this concept with the people around you in your profession, in your educational system. What can you do in your community that might make a difference? And if you're already a social entrepreneur, I hope you appreciated the advice and the great words of wisdom that many of our guests shared today. Thank you so much again for joining us. Join our program every week. We stream Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that is 5 GMT. So tune in and listen to us. You can also click on the link and check out our whole backlog of episodes from season 1 and the first half of season 2. And if you know anyone who would be a great guest on the show, or if you would like to contribute to helping us make this program possible, believe me, it's a labor of love, and we are turning it into for-profit with our new commercials and sponsors. More to come on that. And last but not least, please do us a big help, like and subscribe, especially subscribe to our YouTube channel. We stream on USA Global TV, E360 TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, Roku, many, many other platforms. But you can always find us and join us on my YouTube channel or any of the ones I've just mentioned. So please subscribe. As always, be kind to yourself today and be kind to others. Talk to you next time. Bye.